Hey there, guys. So I'm back once again, as always. I'm in my car, as always, too. The reason why I kind of been doing it here is because I do have, like, there's not nobody around, and usually when I'm at home, everybody's kind of around. So that's why I do these sort of here. So it's kind of like my own little space where I can talk. But thank you guys once again for, of course, taking the time to check out my videos. The last video I did really resonated with a lot of you guys. So I'm glad to hear that. And I did get the critique where I was saying, I think it was, repetitively. There's some words, if you do videos, there's some words that you don't really think about that you say on repeat until you actually pay attention to them. So I didn't realize that I said that so much in that video. So I apologize. It's just something that you don't know until you actually do it enough, until you're like recording. You're like, okay, I see that I say that pretty often. So everybody kind of has those words. There's always words that you say that just goes over and over and over again, and you don't think about it. So I will make sure to think about what I'm saying from here on out. But what I wanted to go over today is I wanted to sort of touch on anxiety and depression, especially related to gay men in particular. And I wanted to sort of expand upon my story a little bit more because I do have a lot of experience when it comes to this, side of things. And I did say, I noticed it that time, but I do have experience on, you know, I said it again. I have experience on dealing with depression and anxiety myself. Whenever I was, again, really coming through, and I said it again, it's going to take me a while to get a grasp on that. So, whenever I was at the time going through a lot of different situations and really coming to acceptance with myself, I had a lot of internalized pressure in my mind. There was many times where I was sort of developed a lot of self-hatred with myself, and a lot of that did have to do with, of course, the coming out experience itself, which I don't want to rehash that too much because I know you guys know quite a bit of my story. But over the years, I developed a lot of really internalized anxiety and depression because a lot of the times I wanted to, of course, be, what basically what my parents really wanted of me. And that was one thing that, again, I wanted to be that perfect son. And it's hard. Like, it's hard when you know you're different, you know that you don't fit the ideal mold. And so you try to align as closely as you can with them. And I think the hardest part with me is that I will repeatedly have phrases that will like come up in my head of things that are said to me. And I think, again, that's the anxiety and sort of the depression side of things where, my mental health, which I've had times where I've went through, like I've said, I've went through a lot of, therapy. I've went through so much therapy in the past. It's been a while since I've actually done therapy, but I went through so many therapy sessions throughout my entire life. And I had to go through a lot of trying to find the right medication that worked for me as far as dealing with my anxiety. My anxiety is at the best it's ever been. It's not as bad as it used to be. No, I do still have moments where I'll basically just, kind of shut down. That was one thing that I did a lot whenever I would have panic attacks is I would just completely shut down and not want to talk to anybody. It was like I just didn't, like I wasn't there. And I used to always ask myself, okay, why are panic attacks such a big deal with me? Why do I deal with these things, And I said, again. But why do I deal with these things so much that I just couldn't find the answer. Like I kept telling myself that I didn't really understand it, and I would always get asked on my triggers, like, what do you think triggers all of these different panic attacks that happen? And I would just say I didn't know. I didn't know exactly what they were. They were just things that happened. I didn't know what triggered it. And as I went through life, a lot of things hinged on my parents. And I love my parents, but there's always been this thing inside of me where I've wanted to be the perfect person. And when you've grown up in a Christian household like I have now, I didn't really, I mean, I did go to church a little bit growing up, but it wasn't regularly. It wasn't regularly until I got into middle school. And like I said, I didn't start going to church until I figured out that I was gay. That was the only reason, really, why we started to really go into church, because of that whole experience whenever I was younger. And so it just became a regular thing that we went to church. And we went to a non-denominational church and things of that nature. And throughout the entire duration, I tried to, again, really get a grasp on understanding my sexuality. And I think a lot of the constant correction, trying to correct things, quote unquote, I guess you could say, and really fix these things when they couldn't be fixed, that they were just normal things. And I think a lot of the issues that I had was a lot of the times that I would talk to my parents. There were many different discussions I had with my parents, and I I would I remember so many times crying and trying to get that acceptance out of them, And like I said, I really dearly love my parents, and I don't want to say negative about them, but I, I I could not get that acceptance from them. I could not fully get that. And so I remember whenever I had talked to them recently, and they would always say to me, you can tell us anything. But the fact is mentally, I, I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't, because every time we would go into a discussion about something, really me trying to be honest and open with them, because I've always been the type of person where I don't want to go under the radar, and I don't want to, do all these things behind their back. I don't want to be. I'm not a down low type of guy. I don't. I've always been an open type of guy. So if I'm going to be open and honest, I want to live my life on it authentically. Like I've always been that type of person. Like I'm not going to go under the radar and not tell them. And that's just how I am. I just want to be honest. I've always been that type of person. Yeah, I know that maybe it's not everybody's business to know about my sexuality, but I'd rather be honest than it be a shock when it happens, if that makes sense. Like, that's how I seen it. Like, I would rather them know rather than them finding out of the blue and me not tell them. And that was kind of the thing that one of the things that's really ruminated on my mind the most, I think, is whenever I'd spoke to my dad, and he told me, or he said, one thing that's ruminating most is that he said to me, um, he asked me why I lied to them when when I went back in the closet when I came back home. And that really, it just, it's really ruminated in my mind. That's been about 5 months ago at this point. That's been quite a while ago since we talked about that. But it's ruminated in my mind a lot. And the more that I've thought about it over these past months, I know that where a lot of my mental health issues come from, where my depression and my anxiety come from, is it mainly came from the, not them like they were trying to, not that they were the ones, but it was like, it was my constant wanting to impress them, wanting to really, really try to impress them. And that's what's brought a lot of the anxiety and the depression upon me, is because I feel like no matter what I do, I'm not going to be what they want me to be. And two, when I would go to church, like I said, I went to a lot of different, I went to church pretty often. And a lot of the churches that I've went to really did not accept gay people. They just didn't. And so when you have all of that, when you have all of these messages sort of sent out to you, and I do remember a lot of times whenever I was younger, there was a lot of like just comments mentioned about gay people, like, you know, that I don't think people really realize, like they were kind of talking about me. And I sort of mentioned that in one other video, but when you have a lot of these different messages and different things just ruminating in your mind, that's why it is like a lot of gay people and a lot of LGBTQ people have a higher amount of mental health, because they're hiding a lot. They're trying to suppress a lot of emotions, and they're trying to, because they don't know how family's going to react. And a lot of people don't understand, a lot of people who may live in a more liberal area or a more open-minded area, like if you're living in a bigger city, they don't understand what it's like for somebody who may be in a really small town or in a rural area, the different hoops that you feel like you have to go through to try to, please everybody, to try to, okay, fit the mold for what is expected of you, so they don't understand that. They don't understand what that feels like. They think it's crazy. And that's again like why pride is such a big deal with me, like I've mentioned before, is because here, when you're in especially the Bible Belt area, when you're in this type of area, it is not easy. It is not easy to really be yourself. And I'm that type of person, like I said, I like to be open. I'm that type of person. You can pretty much tell by what I wear a lot of times that I like to be open. I think it's important. I think it's important that people realize that, like I said, and I will say this over and over again, we live in a world that is not black and white. It is a spectrum of different people. Nobody is going to fit the mold like everybody else. We're all unique and different in our own separate ways. And I know that it's going to take forever for the world, especially the United States, to get a grasp on everybody's different. It's going to take forever because we live in a political climate that is very challenging. That's another thing that really wrecks mental health, is our political climate at the same time. So, like I said, if you're somebody who deals with depression and anxiety, I know that feeling, and I'm not saying that just to say that, because I've been through it. I had many times where I went to jobs. That's why, again, why I work for myself, is because I struggled working in different jobs because of my anxiety and my depression. So I was like, I have to figure out something where I can work, I can go at my own pace, and I can help people in some way. And that's what it said. I'm going to figure this out, be an online coach, and I'm going to do what I can and just make it happen. And I'm going to make it happen no matter what, because this is my last option. And I will tell you that doing this, being an online coach, has completely really changed my whole perspective on, really healing more of myself as far as my overall depression and my anxiety and myself. It's healed a lot from me just being able to be my own boss, in other words, and be able to, set the time that I want to work. And at the same time, really receiving positive feedback from clients that I've worked with and getting that feedback and knowing that I'm helping them in some way. And like I said, I primarily, you know, pretty much had mostly gay clients. And just to know that they feel like they're understood and know that they feel like they have somebody to talk to, that is really what's important to me. Because, like I said, the reason why I've made this such a focus is because I've been through so much shit, for lack of any other words. Because I feel like a lot of times, I've felt alone. And that's another thing that's really wrecked my mental health, is that I've had a lot of issues trusting people, and a lot of, again, all of these different things that I've had to go through, whether it be therapy, trying to find the right medication, trying to find, friends that I can trust, trying to be please my parents and my family, and try to hide things in a certain way. You have all of these different aspects that other people just don't realize. They don't think about all of the challenges that we have to go through. They don't understand that. And so that's why I'm trying to be open and honest and share these stories, because I want you to know that I understand. And like I said, especially if you live in a rural town and you're dealing with, anxiety and depression, and there's not a lot of resources, it's very difficult. It's not easy. I had to do it. That's why I moved to many different places. That's why I moved to LA, because I had to get out. I had to have a place to find resources. I mean, I'm not in LA at the moment, but I hope to be in a place to where I can really enjoy myself a little bit more, because it's hard here. But again, guys, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope that this really resonates with you guys. I tried to pay attention to the words that I say this time. I know I repeated a few words a few times in this video, but I'm trying to pay attention to what I say, because I know it can get annoying to hear the same different words like repeated like that. But thank you guys once again for your support. I really did get a lot of feedback from that last video that I did. And again, guys, I really appreciate that. I can't thank you enough. I want to continue to share these videos. Promise at some point I'll change my background and you're not just seeing my car in every video. But the reason why, again, I do it here is because I don't have to worry about distractions. But thank you guys once again, and I will see you guys in the next video.